This is the whole grains video you've been waiting for. In this video, we're going to talk all about the nutrition of whole grains. We'll discuss why whole grains are really good for you, and we'll go over which ones you should incorporate for your Mediterranean diet approach. Hey there, I'm Dr. Anna. I'm a medical doctor. I was trained in Italy, and on this channel, you are going to learn how to master your health. All right, so let's dive right into the conversation. Now, what exactly are whole grains? Well, a lot of us know grains for the flour that we get from them when we mill it down. And we use this flour for things like bread and pasta and cookies and crackers and cakes. Well, if we take it back a step and think about how these foods come from nature and the plant forms that they grow in, grains are actually the seeds of grasses. And another name for grains are cereals. And I'm not just talking about cereals the way that they are manufactured and packaged to us in a form of a breakfast cereal. I'm talking about cereals from the whole plant form. So it turns out these little kernels are supercharged with nutrition and extremely beneficial to our health. So let's go over the nutrition of whole grains. Well, depending on the variety, some factors might differ. Some grains might have a little bit more fiber than others. Some might be a little bit more nutrient dense, meaning has a little bit more vitamins and minerals than others, but all of them generally provide us a very healthy source of complex carbohydrates. And these carbohydrates, as mentioned, are going to provide us with fiber. And fiber is that bulk component of food that's really important for healthy digestion. It allows the bacteria inside of our gut to thrive, to be as healthy as possible. And that's really important because the gut bacteria are really important for your digestive health and your immune system. And it also turns out we're learning more and more every day from scientific studies of the role that this microbiota plays in our health. It does impact other organ systems like our hormonal systems and our nervous system. So what are some of the main nutrients that we get from whole grains? Well, some of these are going to be vitamins, particularly vitamin A, vitamin E, and many different kinds of B vitamins. B1, 2, 3, 6, 9. A bunch of them are in there. And then we also have some minerals. So this is going to be things like iron, magnesium, phosphorus, or selenium, just to name a few. And then what about that thing called gluten? Well, a lot of you have probably heard about gluten because a gluten-free diet is so commonplace in societies because we know that gluten is a really big problem for some people who have conditions like celiac disease, where they have an autoimmune condition, and those people cannot really ingest any gluten. And then other people might have a direct allergy to gluten, and some people just feel crummy when they eat it. So for certain folks, a gluten-free diet is the way they want to go. But gluten is not inherently something bad for us. It is actually a protein found in a lot of types of grains, things like wheat or barley, for example. And if you're curious to understand a little bit more about gluten and want to see what an approach to the Mediterranean diet would look like if you are gluten-free, I have a cool video for you up here where I break all of that down, so you can check that out after if you're interested. So next, we're going to turn our attention to different types of grains that we could incorporate into our diet. But before we jump into that, I'd like you to please subscribe to this channel. Believe it or not, your subscription helps get this material out to more people who really deserve to learn it. Okay, so this video is all about whole grains. Well, what does it really mean for a grain to be whole? Well, as we discussed in the very beginning, grains, when they come from their natural plant form, are actually the seeds of grasses. So a whole grain is going to be the entire kernel of a seed, and it's going to have a very rough outer coating, and then the inside is going to have a lot more nutrition and a little bit of the softer material. And that's where the starchy part comes from that we can use for making flours into baked goods. So how do they make flour exactly? Well, they take those whole grain forms and they mill it down or break it up into making that really soft material that we call flour. And not all flours are created equal. Flour that comes from the whole grain kernel that has no parts removed is, of course, a whole grain flour. That's why we have things like whole wheat flour, where the entire kernel of the grain is still included when they're milling down that flour. But other times, we actually remove that outer tough coating so that we can create what's called the white flour or the refined flour. The goal is to get a really soft texture to the flour. And that kind of a flour is going to be really important for things like soft pastries or cakes, anything very delicate. And when you remove some of that tough outer coating of a grain, you are actually removing some of the nutrition. You're removing a lot of the fiber and the vitamins and minerals. Not all of it, just a lot of it. So what's the deal with refined grains? Well, we know that refining flour and making that flour then into other baked goods, for example, is a process that we're removing some of the nutrition. And if we eat too much food with too much refined flours, that's actually just going to cause us to have a bigger spike in our blood sugar. Because basically by removing the fiber and the minerals and the vitamins, we're only leaving behind the carbohydrate, which is the form of sugar. So having too much of this in our diet overall, we know does have consequences on our health, but it doesn't mean you have to eliminate it entirely. It's all about keeping it in check. So then what about some of these other terms we throw around? Things like enriched grains or fortified grains. So that is where a manufacturer is going to then add some nutrition back in to a flour that's been refined. Sometimes manufacturers add even more nutrients, vitamins or minerals, than the grain naturally has. And this is important because there are certain nutrients like iron or folate, for example, where a lot of people can be deficient. And so by enriching foods that we commonly buy in the grocery store, like breads or breakfast cereals, we know that most of the population is at least getting a good amount. But don't be concerned about the term fortified or enriched if you see that on a food nutrition label. It just means that they added some nutrients back. All right, so I mentioned before that there are many benefits to our health of eating lots of whole grains. So what are some of these benefits? Well, we know that eating a lot of fiber is good for our digestive health, and it's also good for our cardiovascular health and our immune system. So some of the known benefits of eating a diet rich in whole grains are that it improves our cardiovascular health. It's going to help decrease the risk for atherosclerosis. In other words, that fatty plaque buildup that can happen inside of our blood vessels and then lead to things like heart attacks or strokes. It's also good at helping to improve our cholesterol levels, which are also an independent risk factor for that heart disease. Whole grains are also known to help lower blood pressure. And because of all of the fiber in whole grains, they help us to feel really full after eating a meal, which is very important for our blood sugar regulation and just feeling good after we eat. And I don't know about you, but I don't like the feeling of being hungry, especially not just an hour or 2 hours after I've eaten a meal. In general, we're trying to eat for energy so we can go forward in life and do other things besides eating. Now, a diet rich in whole grains, which inevitably means a diet with pretty adequate amounts of fiber, is also going to help for things like type 2 diabetes and even some types of cancer, like colorectal cancer. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling really excited about eating more whole grains, comment below and share with us which types of whole grains do you like to eat the best? Which ones are you already incorporating into your diet? And which ones are you kind of afraid to eat or you're not really sure how to eat? If you jump in the comments below and tell me, then I'm able to make more videos that can help address your specific questions. But if you're ready to just start eating these things right away and you're super stoked about it, you're going to love my video up here where I go over the top 5 whole grains to include in your Mediterranean diet approach. Jump into that video and I'll see you in there.